Hey, Holly.
Hey, Dave.
How are you today?
I am doing great today. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm good. Rainy, and it's we freak out in LA because of rain. But
we have a little rain.
I mean, it's raining. What are you supposed to do? What do you do when it rains? You go under a desk? What? I'm confused.
What do we do? We're supposed to welcome everybody to the What Difference Does It Make podcast and give them something fun to listen to.
Good idea. Stay inside, listen to a podcast. Listen to us. Just listen to us. Actually, don't just listen to us because we have a special guest, Kyle Meredith. If you live in the Louisville area, you know Kyle as the music director for WFPK 91.9. Where else can you hear Kyle? He does other things.
He does. He has a podcast, Kyle Meredith With.
Occasionally, he makes an appearance on The Morning Joe, an actual TV personality.
Yes, and I was knowing that he was going to be a guest on the podcast. I was a little nervous, because he, like many of our guests, has a vast musical knowledge. But it turns out we kept up with him okay.
For someone so busy, he had a lot of time on his hands. So we talked, which actually made this episode really nice.
So let's get into it now with Kyle Meredith on the What Difference Does It Make podcast and our countdown of the top KROQ songs from 1984. This is number 80 to 71.
The interesting thing about 1984 specifically, it maybe, what do you call it, kismet or whatever that I landed in this part of your series. My wife and I were talking the other night, and she asked me what my first musical memory was. And I thought about it for a second, and I said, my first musical memory was hearing Cyndi Lauper on the radio. And I traced it back to where I was. I knew, the house we lived in and everything. And I said that would have been, I would have been 3 years old in that house. And that would have been 1984. So my first musical memory ends up being 1984. Girls Just Want to Have Fun came out at the end of 1983. It would have been on the radio the next year for us, there. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that's kind of the year that I land on here, because that's sort of where my musical journey really does begin.
Well, she was kind of tied in. I'm sure, well, if you were 3, you weren't watching, actually Pee-wee came on like in 85, 86. Do you remember watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that was Cyndi Lauper, Pee-wee. They had like that same type of vibe, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is kismet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun how this ended up here. But the list you sent me, I mean, it's also interesting because, you're talking about KROQ, and this was, really back then, of course, was the time where you could still have regional hits. Because what I noticed about this list, and I'll of course let you all guide this, but what I noticed about this list was that there's several of these that weren't singles. These weren't singles. These weren't. So I'm guessing this was just the station going, sometimes like I do here at FPK, just like, well, I like this song, so we're going to put it in rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was indeed the case. And that's why it's kind of fun to go through this. Their HD2 channel is their Rock of the 80s format. And they resubmitted a list of songs, their top 80 of 1984. So they took off like 25.7 songs. 26.7. I'm sorry. I'm really bad at math.
We've only been doing this for 2 years.
So anyway, I will ask what I like to do is I'll ask Holly and I'll ask you if the song is on this updated list that they made a couple years ago, if they feel like it's still a relevant song that should be played in the year 2021. And I'll ask if it's something that you would revisit and would be happy to play on FPK right now, or, just kind of a fun discovery for you. Not that you always play new music. I just, was it New Music Mondays? What is your show schedule like? You're only on the air for an hour, Kyle.
Sort of. Yeah, sort of now. I took myself off of a regular time slot because of all the other things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, because it's the Consequence of Sound series that's a partnership with FPK. So there's the interviews and they premiere there at Consequence. And then I use them on my show, and I build the 6 o'clock hour around whoever the artist is. So you just use the opportunity for a theme, basically. It's like upcoming, like the Staves. Okay, so we'll do a whole hour of Sister X, or you just whatever concept, something like that. It's like whatever the artist is, try to build a theme. So that's the 6 o'clock hour. And then I'm sort of loosely on the next 3 hours. It's nighttime. We don't have a host, so I do all the underwriting. And since I'm also the music director, it really is just my show anyway, just less hosted. than I usually would. You hear me once an hour instead of, multiple times. But so yeah, that happens. So it starts at 6, but the hour, that 6 o'clock hour is the main one.
Okay. So you said you did about 250 interviews last year?
Yeah. 250 interviews a year for the last 3 or 4 years at least. And then, but there was more interviews before that. That was just when I really kicked it up. So
you're doing three of these podcasts, or you're calling them podcasts?
They call them podcasts. I've had to fall in line with that.
Okay. Yeah. We weren't sure if that was an actual podcast, but no, they're great. But that's a lot. I mean, to feature an artist 3 times a week. And I figured you were doing a ton of interviews, but how do you fit 250 interviews in a year?
Wherever I can. Some my days have multiple artists on it if I need to. So that's sort of how I fit them into the WFPK show. I might double up on it if it makes sense to. If they're discovery artists, if both of them are discovery artists with not a lot of back catalog, it might make sense to do that. But otherwise, I think the other part of that question is the time, and it's just having really, really strict time management. I know which days of the week that I work on my show. I know which days of the week that I edit my interviews. I know what parts of the day, times of the day are best to try to schedule them, although you're usually at the mercy of the artist. Yeah. And then adding the Morning Joe component in, luckily that's always, that only happens maybe once a month right now, honestly. I mean, it's a new show and we've been through an election cycle, so I'm good to get in there once a month, and that's strictly at 9 a.m. on whatever day we're shooting at, so that part's easier to kind of do, but we're going to be amping that up a little bit now that the elections are over too. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah. I meant more about fitting it into your life, because that's a lot.
And then there's music directing and all of that. And then there's being a good father and husband. And so this is my life.
Did you just put that at the bottom of the list?
Yeah.
They're around. They're tired of me. Yeah. They really are.
That's why you're in the basement.
Yeah.
Kyle, it's time for the basement. Which artist appeals to you? Like, it seems like you're all over. I've seen REO Speedwagon and I've seen the Staves. And, it's nice. It's all over the place. But is there do you feel like a theme? Is there like?
No, there isn't. And I think that's really operating with one hand behind your back too. I understand that. I know the marketing side of things. I've made it more difficult on myself than I probably needed to. But because what you all have is exactly, you have a direction, you have a theme. People will seek you out. People know what they're getting. And with me, it's a bit harder to it's a longer game, I should say, to get the audience, because I'm looking for such a specific type of person who is really into music, but really not that I like every kind of music, it's not that kind of a thing. It's like, you're into music where you'd want to hear from REO Speedwagon as much as the Staves or something like that. And I like operating outside of the AAA world, as much as possible too. That's really fun. I mean, getting to dip into the pop world occasionally, it's a different conversation that I get to have, or the hair band world, if we're looking at the past or something like that. It's just looking for opportunities to have a different type of interview than I would normally have with people, because the AAA world, we're all very close here. I mean, not just the industry, but the artists. I mean, we all have really good relationships. So it's very easy for me to interview my friends or even newcomers that I know, we know the same people. And so those are easy. Those are the given ones. It's just trying to find the ones that kind of rock the boats, do something. Okay, yeah, let's put on Avril Lavigne. I'll talk to Avril Lavigne. Yeah. That sounds fun. Let's do that. It's whatever.
Let's get started, shall we?
Let's do it. Shall we start talking about KROQ?
All right. Kyle, we gave you songs 80 through 71. We're going to just kind of tick them off one by one, just kind of get your opinion of the song. Might lead into something else. Who knows? We'll see where it takes us.
And I should say, so I'm in Kentucky. And that's a huge difference right there in itself. You guys are in LA. You're in a cultural mecca, especially in the 80s. You're one of the two biggest cultural meccas of the world. And rural Kentucky was not. So what I had as my exposure was we had top 40 radio and obviously a lot of hot country radio. But we did have a couple, top 40 stations that were you know, we got the hits, but we wouldn't have gotten the exposure. Like my coming of age years, you know, that really started really happening in 93, 94.
Yeah.
When it was just because, you know, otherwise, you know, we would have heard just the big stuff, cream of the crop.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's probably why Cyndi Lauper kind of makes you go.
We start off with number 80, as we do, with Devo. This is a song called Puppet Boy. What were your initial reactions to this?
Initial reactions was, you know, hearing it and wondering if I had heard it before. And I don't think I had. It wasn't a single from the record to begin with. The record itself was album 6 from Devo. It's an interesting part. I have this little motto about how much I love a sophomore album. And I sort of mean that sometimes literally, but really metaphorically, like, you know, because the sophomore slump, whatever, I love the knowing about the disaster more than I would love knowing about the hit record or whatever. And not to say that it's a complete disaster, but it was a commercial failure for the band. So hearing what they were doing long after everyone had Whip It and Through With Being Cool and, you know, all the great songs, and here you have this one, which sounds exactly like a great Devo song. You know, there's nothing wrong with this song. It was just, unfortunately, if you know, the way I see it, unfortunately arrived in a time and place where people weren't into what Devo were serving up. It's a fun song. It's a really fun song, I think. It's, you know, got all the hallmarks that I'd want out of a Devo song, but that really was the first time I ever heard it, though.
Holly, what about you?
I had forgotten about this song. I remember it. I remembered it after I listened to it. And I like the song better than I like their hits.
And to me, this sounds like Devo trying to be Oingo Boingo. It just, it was like I heard Danny Elfman all over this song. To me, it sounded like they were kind of lost. And apparently it did to the record label, because after this came out, Warner Brothers dropped them. And that was the last we heard from Devo for another 4 years when they went to Enigma Records. And then they put out one more, and then that was the end of Devo for a while. And now they're back. And they were back. They released an album like 10 years ago back on Warner Brothers, which was actually really good.
I loved it. We played it. We played it a lot.
Did you? Yeah.
I still have the blue hats that I picked up at a record store day. I got the one of the cone hats. So it's...
Let me go back to your early memories of radio. Do you remember? Did you listen to Casey Kasem, or was there? And
like a lot of us, you know, I would record, you know, his shows. I mean, we all seem to have that shared experience of recording the radio. I would do that. And even because of where I was, like, I have really strong exposure to Paul Harvey, you know, and the talk side of that type of stuff, like, you know, Good Day, you know, as Paul Harvey would end his shows with. Something I wouldn't listen to now, right. But it was just around in those early days. So yeah, Casey Kasem, I mean, of course, the Countdown was paramount. That was, you know, of course, you know, I'd always tune into that one, listen to that one, and record my own shows, whether or not I would use his and record over him. Sometimes I think a lot of us did that too, but I would definitely do that. But
did you have a cassette recorder that you practiced on?
I have all my old tapes. I still have them all.
Yeah, is there any Casey Kasem on there?
Probably. Yeah. This is all my old tapes are still around here, but I haven't listened to them in a while, but
I want to know if there's a 9-year-old Kyle Meredith on the air doing his own radio show.
It's funny. The first show that I ever put together, like radio show I put together, I was 9. It was my 9th birthday. And I digitized that one because it's got all my friends on it and everything. And my country drawl is so strong, you know, especially about that point though, it really would have been coming more into the, you know, what would become the alternative world and everything. But I think, you know, there's probably some Hammer on there and Garth Brooks and that type of stuff.
So you're right in the Wilson Phillips and Nelson category right there.
Yeah, that's really what and I had 2 older brothers. They're both 7 years older than me. And of course, so they were into like more of the, you know, hard rock, you know, Warrants, that type of thing, you know, it's Poison, whatnot. So I had that exposure too. But I was, you know, I loved Huey Lewis and the News. I had a strong, my mom bought me all the Time Life cassettes that came out at the time. So I was, in my youth, I was really experiencing the nostalgia that a lot of you were. You know, so I was born in 81. If you say technically, I think the Gen X period leaves in 80. But I relate so much more to Gen X than the millennium came afterwards. All my references are Gen X references. I saw all the reruns that all of you all saw, so it's really, I kind of include myself in that. So while I was younger and experiencing things quite different, I still had this strong sense of everything that, had happened for the last 15 years as well. So,
well, we're all inclusive at Gen X. We'll let you in.
I was going to say, are you just trying to relate to us because we're your elders?
Not at all.
This is respecting.
Just a little tip of the hat to you.
Like, I grew up on 70s television, and it was the other thing is that we were just so out in the middle of nowhere, pre-internet days. So it really was, that old joke about, 10 years later, that's when everything was new 10 years later for us. So it was, so with all that, it really is that there's not a lot of difference in, how my brother's, again, 7 years older than me and how I grew up. It was all very similar. I grew up on their stuff. So
did they take you to your first show?
My first show, that was Garth Brooks. They didn't take me.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that was family that took me out there. Yeah, and that would have been 89 or 90, right? 89, 90, something like that, 91. Yeah. It was right as he exploded, after he exploded.
Yeah, that's a good time.
Second record, yeah.
Garth would be very happy to hear that the whole family took you to the show. What a great show, because he puts on a show.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, he was one of the ones that, working the entire stadium, and we didn't have good seats.
And it was a stadium, wasn't it? Probably.
It was in Evansville, Indiana, and it was arena show. Maybe I can't quite remember what's there, but it was big, and we were way up top. I remember that, and not that I cared at all because it was blowing my little mind at that point. But I remember him Garth Brooks doing like he would do concerts on TV like ABC, and that would be an event, and God, I would be glued to the TV the entire time, like anytime those come on. But I remember his specifically just because he was so big at that time. Like it was like Garth Brooks and New Kids on the Block. Like that was at that moment in my life, that was probably my world. You know, as far as pop music goes.
Do you remember the first show you went with your friends?
Yes, Farm Aid '94. That was here in Louisville. They came to Louisville. And I the funny stories about that was my first contact high. It was my freshman year of high school. I went with my older cousin and all of our friends. She was my best friend back then. She's the one that had the driver's license. So she was also senior. So it was the senior, taking up the freshman, and with all of her cool friends. And we went to Farm Aid. And big at the time, and that were playing Farm Aid, that were the newcomers, were the Dave Matthews Band on the Under the Table. What Would You Say had just become a hit. And Hootie and the Blowfish, who had just had a hit with Let Her Cry. Only Wanna Be With You hadn't become a hit yet. So it was right before they even went bigger.
94, yeah, wow.
Yeah. But so I had both of those CDs. And of course, Neil was there. And Willie was there, Mellencamp was there, but I was really there for Hootie and Dave. And Hootie comes out, and it's a fun show. And Dave comes out, and I did not know what jam music was at this point.
That would blow your mind.
Yeah, so I'm ready for it. I'm a pop rock kid at that point, though. So here they are. They go into the songs, and that song is still on. And is this song still on? And I gotta go pee. And I come back, and it's still on. I hated it. I was like, just get to the chorus, man.
Right.
Appreciate it differently now, of course, but yeah, that was the first show that I sort of like that, and then it would be a couple years later before I got my first club show, like in a bar, whatever club, and that was Seven Mary 3.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be. Let's have been like 90s.
Shoot, I'm trying to think. What was the song? I can't remember that.
They broke through with Cumbersome.
Yeah, that was it.
Came in during the second album, Rock Crown, which, by the way, of bands that are unfairly judged by one sound that would become something different. Unfortunately, 783 never got to live down Cumbersome and that sound and everything. But they sort of went the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers route after that. It was like Rock Crown. I go back every now and then, every few years, and I'll listen to it, and I try to separate the nostalgia, but it's such a strong, cool record. There's some dated songs on there, but it's kind of a singer-songwriter folk record. It's really beautiful.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Or was it kind of like a Jarl sound?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. and Jason Ross and I, the lead singer, we'd become friends later on. He kind of skipped out. He's like completely retired out of the industry these days, and I would tell him all the time, I was like, dude, if you just go under your name. Don't go under Seven Mary Three. You could have a career. He's an amazing songwriter, but wasn't meant to be.
Was Seven Mary Three? Was that a Chips reference? Was that?
It was a cop reference.
I think it was from Chips.
Specifically Chips, yeah. But yeah, I know it was. I remember. I know it's a police reference.
I didn't know that at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think that was Larry.
So far away from 1984 and Devo, right?
I know. I'm sorry, dude. We're going from the 90s to the 70s. All right.
Okay, you want to go back to Devo? You want to know if this song is still on the list?
Oh, that's right. Where were we? All right. So Puppet Boy, not a single, but it's Devo. Is it still on the list?
I'll let Kyle answer first.
You're asking if I would still put it on the list?
Yes.
If so, when KROQ pared down their 106.7 songs to a list of 80.
No, I say no.
No, I'm going to say this is only because I think Devo has to be represented, and I don't think they would be represented elsewhere on this album.
No, that they're not on this list. And this will be the last you will ever hear from Devo on KROQ. They are no longer on the list. It's Devo is done.
Then because I wouldn't have thought that the song was on the list, but I was overthinking it.
Yeah, don't overthink it. Just go with your gut. Again, like the SAT, first thoughts. Just go with it.
That was a really long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Talking with Kyle Meredith on the What Difference Does It Make podcast. But let's take a quick little break and be right back.
Welcome back to the What Difference Does It Make podcast. And our guest in helping us count down the KROQ 1984 top 80 to 71 songs, it's Kyle Meredith.
Yeah, right. So here we go. Yeah, it's the Go-Go's, Head Over Heels. Another band, this similar like Devo, this was going to be their last album for a while. Mm-hmm. The album is Talk Show. This was their third album. Listening back to Talk Show, as I think I thought at the time, Talk Show was a much better album than Vacation. Nothing was as good as Beauty and the Beat. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this was a really good album, although it did not do very well. Head Over Heels did. It kind of represented the Go-Go's pretty well. What do you think of it? What are your memories of the Go-Go's as a kid?
I mean, of course, the Go-Go's were a huge part of that's one of the bands. This that definitely did transcend Middle America.
Yeah,
and knew their hits. This was a song that I knew. It wasn't a song that I listened to very often, but a song that I knew. I went back and I wanted to see the music video, and I was laughing at how bored everybody looked in the music video.
Right?
What's her name that's playing the keyboards in it instead of the guitar? I can't think of her
Charlotte
name.
Caffey.
Yeah, she just looks like she's like it's this fake smile. She's like.
Yeah.
His whole thing. And then, sort of remembering what you were talking about, how it was, later on, and they were in a bad spot. I looked that up and it's like, oh, all of this makes sense. What I like about the song now is how much you can hear the song in it and not the decade. And that's, as that's important for, it's a good song if it can transcend the decade. And while you've got a lot of the 80s production on there, you can hear that. Like I've never heard the demo of that, but I can hear the demo of that song. I can hear the acoustic version of it. It's there pretty good. So, and that's, as far as fun little quirky pop rock songs go, I think it's a, fun little quirky pop rock song.
You're not looking for any deeper meaning in it.
They tried to put deeper meaning into it in the interviews, but it's, their intentions were there. But I just think, it's just, it's some good cotton candy.
It certainly is. Holly, what do you think of this song?
I love this song.
Yeah.
I think I would, first of all, this song was written, by Kathy Valentine and Charlotte Caffey. Talk Show was not nearly as good an album for me, but still, now knowing what we know about them and the place they were in, it's kind of hard to separate. You're overanalyzing, well, where were they here? Like I listened to this. Did we talk about this?
We got to talk to Kathy Valentine last year for her, to promote her memoir, which is really good. Worth really checking out. As she mentions in her book, every one of these band members were going through their own personal issues. It's quite a story. We talked about, like you mentioned how bored Charlotte was. And you could see, we had talked about during her interview, the final performance of the Go-Go's at, it was like a Rock in Rio show. And Kathy was really into it. You can watch it on YouTube. You could see Kathy into it, and the rest of the band members are bored as hell, and they just want to get off the stage. And Kathy just said, I was oblivious. I had no idea. I was like, this is great. Look at us. We're playing to 500,000 people. This is the best. And that was the end of the band.
No idea it was going to end.
Yeah. And that's kind of, when you watch that video, you kind of get the same thing. You look at that like, what can we get the camera off of me now? I just do not.
I think this is a great pop song. It has everything you want. And this is funny. I read a quote from Jane Wiedlin. I just think it's a classic, like a little pop truffle of chocolate that's just completely delicious.
There you go. Kind of what Kyle touched on there. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So is this song still on the list?
I'll say yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, it made a big jump. It's now at number 45 on their updated list. Good LA reason. Band, you gotta keep the Go-Go's on there. Let's go on to number 78. This is a band called Romeo Void. I don't know if you know of this band, Kyle, but this was their one hit. Although it didn't even. I always thought of this as a bigger hit than it was, but it only reached up to number 35. It's A Girl in Trouble is a Temporary Thing. And what did you think of this song?
So this is a lost classic. This really is. This is one of those, this should be played so much more often these days than it is.
Yeah.
I was not aware of it in the day when it was in its moment. I wasn't. It came off later. And it's because one of my nerdy little hobbies that I've had for a long time is to go back and read old radio trade magazines.
Yeah.
And they're all cataloged online. It's similar how I had launched a subscription, but it's sort of in that vein that I'll go back and read really old R&R or, just any of them. Gavin, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Music trades. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go back just for the fun of it when I have free time every now and then. And I'll pick, usually I'll just pick like a big round anniversary year and, and I'll read that. And that's how I really found out about Romeo Void. Because like I said, the song really it wasn't a big thing over here. But it was some years back that I kind of found it, and it was like the name kept popping up and it was doing decent on the charts. And it was like, what is this? And then listening to it and going, what a great song, what a great song. And, for whatever reason, it didn't do the thing that the other songs did, or something like that, which is a shame because when I listen to this now, it's like this should have had more legs in it than it seems to have done. I mean, nice use of a sax, right? Not too much, just some really tasteful sax all the way throughout.
Appropriate.
Yeah. When going back for this and really listening to it with this in mind, the production stood out because there's no dominant instrument. Like everything is mixed out front. Which kind of gives it its own little flavor, I think. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this song.
I don't know if you've ever heard, they had an earlier hit called, just a local hit in LA. It might have gone on to play on some other alternative stations around the country, but it was called Never Say Never, which had the most memorable line was, I might like you better if we slept together.
Yep.
You remember,
Yep.
You've heard that one?
Well too,
yeah. She's very talented. Just the whole band, actually, they're really good, but she's a really good lyricist. And what were your thoughts, Holly?
Before doing the research, I might have thought Never Say Never was a bigger hit.
Well, that's because we heard it on KROQ as kids, and you assume.
Covered too, because I was familiar with the song before I was familiar with the original.
Oh, okay.
So that's, I want, like, if you'd have asked me the same thing, which was a bigger song, I probably would have Never Say Never.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah.
It made number 35, but if you look on YouTube, you could see their performance on American Bandstand, their interview with Dick Clark. They were a good band. That's kind of, I wish we could have gotten more from them.
Yeah,
which is a shame. So we did touch on saxophone. Do you have some? I gave you on the cheat sheet. I listed, hey, what's 80s sax songs do you like?
Oh, I missed that on the cheat sheet. I missed that line on there.
But you must have, like, off the top of your head, you must think of like a Man-Eater or an Urgent. What?
Sure. Of course, now I'm going to blank because I'm on the spot. That's the only problem. Because, of course, the first thing when you come to mind is a 70s song. It's not an 80s. It was Baker Street.
Oh.
It's like the greatest, sax riff of all time.
Is it? Or, I don't know, Careless Whisper? I mean, come on.
Let me tell you something. You're going to hate me for this one. I can't stand that damn song. I hate Careless Whisper.
It's not my favorite either. It's not. It's probably one of my least favorite.
Oh, how dare both of you. Also. Both. Oh, for shame, both of you. God.
I did see My Morning Jacket covered Careless Whisper
they did,
at Forecastle Festival here in town once, and threw bananas at the crowd the entire time they were singing it, because why not?
Yeah.
There's no relation
because,
to that.
Because
that's
My Morning Jacket.
Favorite moment of Careless Whisper. It's really my only... my wife, Jen, huge George Michael fan, so of course she hates that I don't like it.
I think it's okay, especially even more so if you are a fan, because I am a huge fan of George Michael and Wham, but that still is one of my lesser songs. I wouldn't put it in a top 10 necessarily.
Is this song still on the list?
Is it on the list? I want it to be on the list.
Okay.
I want it to be on the list, but it's just so kind of lost to time that I would fear it would be not. But I'm gonna overthink this, Holly. I'm gonna overthink this. But at the same time, you'd want to have some cool cred, so you would include it on the list. I'm gonna gamble and say it's on the list, even though I don't think it will be.
The dice. All right, Holly, where do you think?
I'm not overthinking it. I think it's on the list.
Yes, for sure it is on the list.
All right, good.
Although I shouldn't say for sure, but yeah, it was. And I think it's because it's an LA thing. It did so well in Los Angeles, and that's why they still play it. We're going to a B-side. This is Duran Duran's Make Me Smile, a cover song. The name of the band is Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel. Kyle, as a student of past songs, maybe did you ever study the UK and their past hits? Because this was a #1 smash.
I do. I didn't know the song.
Yeah.
I didn't know, but reading about it, it's been covered like a bajillion times. So how this song slid by me, I didn't know this Duran Duran performance. I didn't know. I've never seen the video before now. This one, again, Duran Duran's one of those inescapable bands of the 80s. So, it's, of course, I was familiar with a lot of their catalog at the time, but this wasn't one of them. This wasn't a song that I ever saw. And so seeing it for the first time now, listening to the song and then finding out it's a cover and then realizing I don't know the cover either. And it's like,
yeah,
but it's, here's a few thoughts with that in mind. All right. The live video, I always thought was a cop out. I hated when my favorite bands would do the live video. If it were still a thing now, I would still hate it now. It's like, oh, come on, the live video. And it's like, I don't want to see it. So I would have felt like that then. There were a few bands because of my age that I would have loved to have been in the crowd in the moments. Like my wife and I talk a lot about, we're huge Tears for Fears fans. And it's one, she'll every now and then she'll say, I just wish I could go back in time and sit in a mall when Tears for Fears were still new and huge. And Duran Duran's kind of like that for me. Like, I could see them now. It's different. So while I think the live video is a cop out, I would have loved to have been any of those kids in that crowd of that one.
Yeah. And did you listen to the original song?
I didn't go back yet.
Oh, you didn't watch these guys?
No, not yet.
I mean, it is super. I mean, we talk about the 80s. You watch Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel. This is 1975 encapsulated. It's got everything you want in a 1975 rock band. Just the hair and like fur jackets and just just good time rock and roll. Yeah, it's pretty perfect. I'm glad that Duran Duran covered. It's always nice when bands cover songs, like you mentioned with Romeo Void. You wouldn't have discovered Romeo Void if it wasn't for this cover song. So a lot of people. I mean, through REM, I discovered a lot of songs.
Absolutely.
The Velvet Underground, Femme Fatale. I went back to that, and they did Toys in the Attic. That was the first time I think I heard Aerosmith do that. Like, oh, okay. It's nice when a band kind of pays tribute to the past, and hopefully a lot of fans will go back and listen to the songs that influence them. If you like us, you're going to love these guys.
That's my exposure now. So now at some point I will find more.
Oh yeah.
I do want to say something. It's interesting perspective. You're talking about live videos being a cop out, Kyle, and I understand. I know a lot of people do feel that way. But it's funny, back in the day, I remember this is early MTV, and bands were doing, videos like stories, full stories, and I liked it, I enjoyed it, but oftentimes I really enjoyed the live performances because you want to see your artist performing live, your favorite artist performing live. There's just something about it, even though sometimes those were cheesy, also not, you didn't feel like they were real performances.
Right.
But I enjoyed that too. Sometimes I struggled with the stories because they were so cheesy.
Yeah, I don't know. That for me, I guess maybe it was because I was younger, but I don't know. I'd still do that now. Like so Pearl Jam, we were talking about that a little bit, and that was really my coming of age, like obsession. I spent a lot of money, seen a lot of shows. 50 some odd, but famously stopped doing music videos after the 10 album. And then when I think it was it wasn't binaural, it might have been Riot Act, the one after that. So we're talking about the early 2000s records anyway. They finally did videos again, but they were always live on stage, if not in front of an audience, just live on stage. And I was like, oh no, we didn't wait 10 years for this. I didn't want that. I can go see a show or I can watch the concert, my DVD at the time. For me, I guess, I wanted that because, and I've thought about this a lot as even now I'll go back and watch a lot of these videos and compare them to what bands are these days. I mean, we talk about, the bands of our youths being gods, just, they were gods, these people. And you don't get that sense now because everybody is so human and accessible. And it was the stories that really made a decade. It was, it was sensational, mythical music videos. They weren't real, they were these created worlds that we lived in, that we saw multiple times a day, and we started building our personalities around, and we put our clothes, to make sure that they represented us like that. And so for me, that's what it was. It's like I was missing out on something. I don't want to see you sweating on stage because I need you to not be human. I think that's is a much longer version of what I was actually thinking at the time, because I'm pretty sure I didn't put that much thought into it. But that's sort of the therapy version.
Okay, you might be bringing me around.
Why I needed that, yeah.
So we were talking Duran, Make Me Smile, of course. We're talking only about Duran Duran.
We could.
Yeah, I understand. Is Make Me Smile by Duran Duran on this list?
No.
Nope.
No is correct. Good job. You guys are getting good at this. All right.
I like that I have an edge being from Los Angeles.
Right? Okay. Here we go. Number 76, Depeche Mode. Get the balance right.
Mm-hmm. I just had Martin on my series 2 days ago. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, it's a fun little time. Yeah.
What is he?
How is he?
How is he?
Oh, he's great. He's great. Yeah. Because he's out there now, right? He's in LA, I think is where
is he promoting something or what?
Yeah, he's got a new instrumental EP. He's such a great lyricist and melody writer. And so one of the first questions that someone else I didn't, another interview had brought up, why weren't these full songs? He's like, what the hell am I going to write about right now? He goes, I've been inside my house for a year. He goes, I never go out. I have no inspiration. It was enough for me to do instrumental songs. Yeah. It's a concept. It's instrumental, but it's a concept album still. I won't go into all the details, but it's sort of that story of, comparing like chimpanzee to human and how we've screwed things up. But he was a great interview and everything. And Depeche Mode, I mean, they're, if not a top 10 band for me, then a top 15 band for me.
Did you listen to them at the time?
At the time, like here in the
80s, yeah.
Not when this song would have come out.
Yeah.
I came on.
He was 3.
90s, sorry. Yeah, I guess I should have said 90s a little.
But I'm sure like Personal Jesus was probably your first exposure.
So Enjoy the Silence was one of the first videos I remember. And it, struck such a tone with me, with the crown and everything and walking out into the mountains and nature and all of that, to the point where when my son was little, he got a crown and I would put a cape on him all the time just so I could have him reenact that video. So Enjoy the Silence really was probably my first exposure to Depeche Mode. And I'm a huge fan of 90s Depeche Mode too. I think It's No Good is one of their greatest songs. It's one of the sexiest songs of all time, and which they do really good at. But yeah, I was really quick to kind of go back and start listening to some of the albums as well. If I have my preference, I'd still put on probably their greatest hits album, because I think they're when you become a fan of a band, we'll bring up REM again. When you become a fan of a band and you're a really good fan of the band, you want to listen to the deep cuts as much as everything. And I love Depeche Mode and I love their album tracks, but I'd still probably put on their greatest hits, because their greatest hits are so good.
Yeah.
It's hard not to listen. They don't get overplayed to me. It never. Even Personal Jesus or Enjoy the Silence, I could listen to right now and just be completely happy with too. But I like the song again. So this was still when they were coming out of being the pop synth pop band at the beginning. It was a transitional moment. They were a quartet again for a second with Alan in the band. That's an interesting kind of point. Going back and watching the music video, I didn't know the story behind it, but the first thing you see in the music video is, of course, Alan singing, mouthing the parts. And as I read, it was because the director assumed he was the singer and the band was too shy to correct the director. So they just let him shoot it like that. So,
you think about it, they were probably in their early 20s and still, like, all right, let the director do his thing. Maybe that's what he wants,
Yeah. Now, if I had seen that video at the time when I was it would have scared the shit out of me. I'm certain about that. Like in the way, like the Willy Wonka was a little bit creepy, even though it was supposed to be a family movie, and had that weird British darkness to it. Like when I look back on this one going, that video probably wouldn't have meant to, but I would have been kind of like a little bit scared of this, afraid of this band. Yeah.
I am a huge Depeche Mode fan, and this actually is one of my favorite songs. And I have no shame in saying that their greatest hits are some of the greatest songs of all time. But I didn't remember this video, so I was so glad you sent it, Dave, because I didn't remember it, and I thought it was. I can see how you might find it a little bit scary, a little bit stressful.
Well, it's that Clockwork Orange vibe, that undertone, that's got to it. So yeah,
But I just love them so much, and I actually, before I knew that the mistake with Alan Wilder, I had to watch the video a couple of times, going, wait, who's singing? Who's singing in the video? Yeah,
right.
This was great. This was it was great to see again. I listened to it. It's on one of my regular running playlists, so. I hear the song all the time, but it withstands the test of time, and it is absolutely on the top 80.
I'll say it's on the top 80.
Yes. Well, it most definitely is. It's number 59. It's kind of interesting how just get the balance right. It's like lyrically, it's like, go ahead and try, but you're going to fail, but try anyway. It's like when you think you've got a hold of it all, you haven't got a hold of it all. When you reach the top, get ready to drop, prepare yourself for the fall. You're going to fall. It's almost predictable. So,
Good time Charlie's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. I
also didn't know that there's an exclamation point at the end of the song. I mean, at the end of the title of the song.
It's demanding.
Say it completely different.
Alan's right.
I was just thinking about some of the other songs. If you applied the idea of this one, like, just can't get enough, but you could get enough. It's no good, but sometimes it really is.
Yes. Right.
Dream on, but not too much, because you'll wake up.
As we talked about the pandemic, go out, spend money, but don't just stay inside. But you can go to restaurants, but don't just have it delivered to you. It's the same.
That could be the theme of a whole other podcast too.
Yeah, it really is. There is in the video, we touched on it. They're playing video games, and I would imagine that maybe a 9-year-old Kyle Meredith, was playing some video games. What would you? Do you have any favorites?
We had an Atari, and I still have it. It's right over here.
Of course you do.
Yeah, it's right next to my NES and all the other things. My office is just my teenage bedroom that I've just carried along with me through the years.
It really is a museum, a Kyle Meredith museum.
Honestly, is. I mean, even the clock next to me is still my alarm clock from way back in middle school. My wife won't let me have it in our bedroom anymore because
it's right. There was a loud.
It makes an alarm clock sound.
My God, that's what we woke up to.
Instead of electronic.
It has a cord on it, but it's got the phone, and I would literally call radio stations and request songs with this phone here. So it's kind of fun.
And Ticketmaster. Right?
I would have done, I would have done that too.
Oh my God.
But the arcades, I think they were playing Galaga in that video, weren't they? If I remember right.
Galaxian,
that's it. Yeah, that's it. It's Galaga, yeah. But we had in Litchfield, we had a bowling alley that had an arcade in it. But me and my brother, one of my brothers, there's Mr. Getty's, one of those buffet, pizza places.
Yeah.
That you get the buffet and everything. And but anyway, they had a small game room. And it was smaller than bowling alley, but that's where me and my brother would go all the time to do. He liked the arcade. I liked the pinball. I still love the pinball. We have now huge arcades around town since that nostalgia rolled back around and people can actually make money at that again. And there's, rooms around here that have like 200 pinball machines in it and whatnot. And we haven't been able to in the last year, of course, but we'll still do that. We'll, me and my whole family will grab a pocket full of quarters and and head over, spend an afternoon.
Do you have a favorite pinball machine then?
Indiana Jones. It's an Indiana Jones machine. I was trying to think. I think it's tied to The Last Crusade, if I remember right. I found it once at a truck stop here in Kentucky that we would stop at. It was a midway point between my mom and my dad's house. You know, child of the 80s, divorced.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a midway point, so we would usually stop there once my mom was dropping me off or my dad was picking me up or whatever. It was only like a half an hour away, but it was just, we'll stop there. And so I would always go in and play the Indiana Jones, and I loved it. And for a long time, it was out of my life. And then one day I found it again here in Louisville too. And I was able to play it again. They're like, no, this is a great machine. So I've said it before. I haven't made it in my life yet because I don't own that machine. I'll know I've made it successful if I can afford to buy that Indiana Jones pinball machine.
Bring it into the basement.
Yeah, that's a good goal.
Life goals. Good for you.
Yes.
Keep reaching for the stars, Kyle. Okay, we already touched on Get the Balance Right, number 59 now on the KROQ charts. Now we're at 70. God, we're only halfway through this. Okay, we got to... all right. Number 75, Spandau Ballet, Revenge for Love. Also the last time we will hear from Spandau Ballet.
Right. So growing up, of course, the only song of theirs that I would have been exposed to for the longest time would have been True. This is one of those classic cases of future people, I think, not realizing how big a band was in their day and that they just didn't make the classic jump.
Yeah.
Because I know, going back, and I was saying, like, reading old trades, just going back and reading magazines and seeing old interviews, they were like a big band at the moment. They had multiple hits. They were a thing that you would pay attention to. And then something happened and they just didn't make the jump to the next generation, other than, probably what around the time Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler's Wedding Singer came out, where we started finally getting nostalgic for the 80s. You had to have a little bit of time there, right? My mom had their greatest hits CD. Yeah. And so I was aware of them and everything. But honestly, I think she would only ever play True.
Of course.
Because they weren't that song either. That's not the best representative song of what they were. I mean, this song right here, this is what nearly post-punk, when you hear True, that's like a romantic ballad, a new romantic at least. Where this is more like a post-punk song for them. I was really surprised in this one. I kind of dug it and was like, I feel like this is one of those things I need to go back and dig a little deeper on.
Highly recommend, because True is not representative of, I don't think True is representative of them as a band. And I think it was definitely their internal strife that didn't allow them to go further, because their voices, everything about them, they had it. They had it all. Tony Hadley's voice, I think, is fabulous. Definitely worth going back to revisit.
Yeah.
But this song, I had also forgotten about this song.
All right. Revenge for Love, Spandau Ballet. Is this song still on the list?
I like it, but I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no, too.
That is correct. It is no longer on the list.
Bummer.
And once again, they miss out.
I know, but
the jump. Yeah.
Kyle still likes it. He will play. I'm looking forward to hearing these songs now.
I'll do it.
He's a powerful man in Louisville. He can play whatever the hell he wants.
Powerful man in Louisville. That's what is that?
I don't know. We're going to have a Spandau Ballet revival. They're going to play.
What do?
Yeah. Okay. This is another one of Holly's favorites. Her band. She loves these all.
That's why we do this podcast. Yeah. You could pretty much say that about every one of these artists.
All right. So
this is one of my. I love this band.
Okay. So it's Simple Minds. The song is Up on the Catwalk. Go ahead.
This is one of my least favorite singles by one of the bands that I do love the most. So that's it's an interesting kind of, I don't hate the song. It's just one of those moments again, I talked to Jim a few times before on my series, and all we do is talk about old stuff. So, it's, I love talking about Simple Minds and everything, but yeah, I mean, the Catwalk song, it's never been, I liked in your email that how you're relating it to what Right Said Fred, which one is the better Catwalk song. And I'd actually say the Right Said Fred song is the better.
That is the correct answer. That is the correct answer.
I don't know. I think this one has longevity. Up on the Catwalk has longevity. I'm not sure about I'm Too Sexy.
I'm Too Sexy came on the other night. We weren't playing it. I don't know who was playing it.
Yeah, dope.
And you started dancing?
Oh, of course.
Of course you do.
We just had like Spotify playlists on. It's what we did. We had a Spotify playlist on, and it came up, and we were having a good time with that. Like I said, this song it's not like it annoys me or anything, but it's not a song of Simple Minds that I kind of turn to or anything like that. And I hadn't seen the video before, so watching the video was kind of fun. and thinking about, it's not that fashion hadn't been a big thing in every other decade before, but there was definitely a sense of heightenedness in the 80s going on. And even in the music, I mean, with a few years before, Bowie doing the song and Duran Duran playing into it, to a lot in that sense with what they were doing. Of course, MTV had made everything, fashion really, really on everybody's TV, even more so than ever. So I understand why the song exists. And it is fun kind of watching it through that lens and everything. But for me, it's another Simple Minds song.
What do you think of Up on the Catwalk, Holly?
I love the song. It doesn't necessarily rank among my favorite songs.
You could see that they're amping up their game, and it's not surprising that Don't You Forget About Me was right around the corner. It's a fun song, but again, it's just kind of for me. It's like I don't necessarily. This doesn't represent the band for me at all.
Yeah. Like Promise You a Miracle. I mean, that to me, that's one of the greatest songs of the entire decade. Something like that. But yeah.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. Is this song Up on the Catwalk still on the KROQ list?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. 57. All right, here we go. Ultravox, White China. Do you have any recollection of this band? I mean,
nowadays,
now you do. Okay.
Ultravox, I mean, I knew Vienna at some point later on.
Yeah.
That came into my world.
I would imagine, like in Kentucky, this is a band that did not make any.
Ultravox was not happening in Kentucky at the time. And even now when I listen to it, like, it's probably really cool to say you like Ultravox now. I can also hear 1,000 other bands that sounded exactly like them at the time, So it's like, in not really diving into their history, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of got lost in the mix, bubbled up for a song every now and then, but they just sort of sounded of the time, ultimately, at least to me now.
What about you, Holly? What do you think of Ultravox? We stand or fall. We stand or fall.
I'm a fan. I love the music. I love the sound. I love Midge-Ure. I guess they were interchangeable with some other artists. I mean, Brian Ferry of the same, around the same time, similar sound, I guess. I'm supposed to like them. I like them, but I can see how maybe people who thought they were supposed to like them and weren't necessarily real fans of the music.
So somebody at KROQ really liked this song outside of things, though, and they're like enough to spin it that many times. With a lot of these bands, I try to think of the equivalent, like who they would be now, and like we see that a lot now. It's much easier to see those artists like who you're supposed to like, these days.
Yes.
Like I'm gonna get myself in trouble because I'll say some of them, but like Kurt Weill. Like a Kurt Weill single comes around, I'm like, I need to play Kurt Weill because people like Kurt Weill. And then I think, do people like Kurt Weill? Or do people just know that they're supposed to like Kurt Weill? It's like, is these songs really honestly good? Or you just think they're good? You're supposed to like Ultravox, but do you?
Yes, I like Ultravox. Kurt Weill, maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
How about you? You didn't give your opinion on this. What about
I did like this song. I was never into Ultravox at all. And I kind of discovered Ultravox because Midge-Ure was part of Live Aid and setting up that with Bob Geldof. And Bob Geldof took he was the face of that. Nobody knew that Midge-Ure also wrote Do They Know It's Christmas? And does the KROQ fan still appreciate this song enough that it is still on the list?
I'll say no.
No.
This song is still on the list. Number 56.
You know why? Because you're supposed to like Ultravox.
There it goes. This is good for you. This is the
opportunity to tell you, well, you don't really have to.
This is the castor oil.
They didn't know that themselves.
You must know this.
By the way, I told you, Dave, I saw Midge-Ure speak at a conference I went to a couple of years ago, and he sang Vienna, and it was lovely.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, there's a couple really good Ultravox songs that you dig into the catalog. It's kind of like Spandau Ballet. Like if you dig a little deeper, you'll find some nuggets in there. Got two more here. Here we go. Talking Heads, Burning Down the House. Have we heard this song before?
I mean, we're obviously talking about the biggest song on this list. How it's so far down the countdown at this time is very surprising to me that it's in this section of it. And it's hard to come at this song with any kind of fresh perspective. This is an amazing song. It's a great song. going back, I'm trying to like think of it in ways that I've never thought of it before. I mean, that guitar at the beginning is so interesting. And I think I just take that for granted a little bit because again, this is just one piece that's always been a part of my life. But that, that whole thing that's doing like that's so freaking cool. I mean, everything that we know about the Talking Heads, they were rewriting the book in the moments every single time they put out a record. I'm a fanatic of the band, and I still dig what David Byrne did afterwards, even though some of it was kind of forgotten to time. I always thought it was really interesting, and you are supposed to like David Byrne, but I honestly do like David.
I almost feel like, and I know this is more I'm saying this more as a fan than I am as a professional. We also spoke to Chris Franz last year when he was promoting his memoir. And so having read it and after reading about some of the dynamics, I got a little sad, even though I love him. He is a brilliant artist. I love why he's so compelling to watch. I felt a little sad after I read it, even though it's only one person's perspective. I thought, I don't want to know this.
Yeah, well, when you got a guy that's that size of out personality, you got to imagine he's probably not the easiest to work with in a band dynamics. It's got to be his show. Chris, of course, if I remember right, a Western Kentucky University grad. So we actually have that connection.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
That's right.
So it's always kind of been a part of our like Talking Heads, like not a local band by any means, but we got a connection.
A little bit, yeah.
Yes.
Are you a studio version or a live Stop Making Sense version?
Stop Making Sense is such a it's its own studio, album, even though it's a live album, but it's still its own piece.
Yeah.
But which version would you prefer? Which would you?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. I don't think I'd even pick. I think it'd just be like, what am I going to go with today? Sort of a thing. I keep the studio version in rotation, obviously in our gold category. But I know that when, the hosts, when we're dropping in our jock picks and everything, that a lot of time we'll hit that live version. So I don't kind of go one way or the other on that one.
Yeah,
you, Dave?
I love the studio. All right, I'm sorry. I love the live version. Stop Making Sense is so amazing, and kind of to your point of like the streaming shows, and like it's kind of leaves you hot and cold, and like, all right, I can take it or leave it. Stop Making Sense is just brilliant from the get go, and just watching their version of this and the expanded lineup of the Talking Heads with Bernie Worrell, it's just wonderful. There's so much going on in that performance. That I always love. I always go to the live version. I prefer that much more than the studio version, and that's just for me. Did you see American Utopia? I
haven't watched that. I saw. I haven't seen what's on TV online these days. I saw the tour. They
did you?
And everything. Yeah. So.
Right. Oh, the David Byrne. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to see that, but I haven't watched the film yet.
Yeah, it's similar. What were your feelings of his stage performance on that? Yeah.
It was so fun. The brain in the table and the movement. And I'd done the interview before I saw the tour and knew about the whole thing about movement. And so we got to talk a lot about that. So I kind of went in, understanding the concept and everything. We did see it, that show we saw in a festival atmosphere. And I wonder what it would have been like in one of the art halls. Like usually when he comes to Louisville, he plays, he doesn't play like the usual music room. He plays the arts center, those places like that. So I would have liked to have seen it in there. Like he came with, like the St. Vincent tour, like they did in there. And there was so much choreography that went along with that. It was just, mind blowing. So I will see the film, but the show was fantastic. Yeah.
It does feel like it should be more intimate.
What do you like, Holly? Where are you on the burning down the house?
It's amazing that I can ever make a decision. I can't on this one.
All right. Well, then I will ask you, is it on the list still?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You should have made us guess which number.
But I'm going to ask: is it Romeo Void is at 35? The Go-Go's are at 45. Those are the biggest jumps.
This is a trick question.
Where is
I would say this is ahead of that?
Where is Burning Down the House?
This in the top 10.
Yeah.
Right. So Kyle
thinks saying it's not that high.
I'm asking you. Do you think it's? Do you think it's
put it in the top 10?
You would put. Okay. Where would you place this?
I would at least put it in the top 20.
They have placed this at 54. It's still on the list, but 54. Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
I don't know. As we touched on before, like last week, we talked about the Cars, and there were some songs that were big hits of the Cars that they took completely off the KROQ list because probably it's too big a hit. It's too big to play. No one wants to hear it. All right, let's wrap this up with our final song, number 71.
I'm so happy about this one. I'm so happy this one's on the list.
Sparks, Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat. Actually, it's premiering at the Sundance Festival this weekend. Edgar Wright, I don't if you're familiar with his work, he's directing this documentary called The Sparks Brothers. It's exciting that Sparks is going to get their due.
I've done a lot of interviews on this already with Sparks. I don't know Edgar, but Edgar does a lot of stuff in town with Jim James. They're best friends. So this has been revolving in my world for a while. I was so happy to see this on this list.
Yeah. What's your experience with Sparks?
Sparks isn't something that I realized that I found out about until well into my 20s. You know, they weren't a Kentucky thing. Not by far. I don't even remember how I found out about Sparks, but I was a perfect age, I will say, when I did. Just the same as, 10 years before that in my early teens, when the first time you find Monty Python, like I can equate sort of the similar things, like finding Sparks is like discovering Monty Python for the first time, or something like that, because these songs at first are absurd. And then the more time you spend with them, you're like, oh my God, these are such good songs. It's not like, it's not the same thing as listening to a Weird Al record, where it's funny, and those are funny. And maybe 20 years later, I can listen to that Weird Al record again. Like Sparks, there's a joke the first time around, but then it just becomes a really great song. And the fact that they've spent, 50 years basically taking these mundane moments and making them into sensationalized songs with weirdo melodies and operatic pieces within 3 minutes. It's like, you talk about one of the most ill-represented, underrated bands of all time, and Sparks has got to be on that list.
I know Dave agrees. Did you, there was an interview with Edgar Wright in the LA Times. I love, he was asked how he found Sparks fans, like who did he know? How did he know what celebrities or what artists to interview? How did he know they were Sparks fans? And he said you just go up to someone, like I think he said Jason Schwartzman, and there were a couple of others that he said you could just tell that they're Sparks fans, and they were. Yeah,
like Patton Oswalt or Beck, Duran Duran, going back to Duran Duran, they're in there. They're kind of like your secret little band that's only your cool friends know about, or like
right. It's a handshake band.
It really is a handshake band. Cool band. Are they still on the list?
Probably not, because it seems like that's their career.
Yeah, I want them to be, but I don't think. And I know that they have other songs that definitely still are, but I don't think this one is.
Yeah, that's correct. This song clearly is not going to be played because, as Kyle said, that's their MO.
Yeah, burning down the house.
Yeah, right. We got another burning down the house to play. We can't play Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat. Yeah. Come on. Hey, we made it through the list.
We did it.
Kyle, thank you so much for doing this.
Blast.
Yeah,
this was seriously a blast.
Oh, very good. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. I mean, obviously, you're the guest that won't leave. He's like, I can stay forever. This is so much fun.
What do you guys need?
Yeah.
Well, that was so much fun. Thank you so much for asking me to be here.
Sure.
This was great.
Thank you for doing this. This was really fun.
Where can people find you, Kyle?
I'm right here in this basement forever.
Okay.
Perpetually for here. WFPK.org. My show starts every night at 6 p.m. That first hour is the streamed hour. Consequence of Sound. I do new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Of course, you can get those anywhere you get podcasts from. All the places, including the video versions on YouTube. That's there as well. And occasionally, without warning, I'll be on Morning Joe on NBC.
Nice. We're going to set you free now. So
we're going to let you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I think I will.
You can edit that out.
All right.
Or don't.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. This really has been lovely.
Yeah. Thanks. Take care. I'll see you soon. Yeah.
Bye.
Be safe. All right. So we got another 10-song chunk out of the way. How about that?
Out of the way. This is so fun.
Okay, you're right. As we break them down into 10-song chunks, they all seem to have their own little theme to them. So it's kind of nice just to hear some bands you won't hear from again, and here's some B-sides. So I had a good time, and Kyle, of course, had some wonderful insights into all these songs. Make sure to check out his show, Kyle Meredith, with his podcast, really good. Tell Alexa that you want to hear WFPK. Check out the Louisville Public Radio station there, because that's actually a really, really good station and fun to listen to as well. So
you could just ask Alexa to play something with Kyle Meredith and you would get a whole variety of responses.
I don't like to give Alexa too many choices. We are a proud member of the Pantheon podcast family, the podcast network for music fans. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Holly.
Thanks to Dave.
All right. And so until next week, this is Dave.
This is Holly.
Check you later.
Over and out.